everybody. My name is Joanne Can. I am a Royal Crown Diamond from Hong Kong. And if you have heard me speak before at the other past online symposium, you may know who I am. If not, then you would have to go back and rewatch all of those online symposium videos. So this is the fourth one that I've done. The first one I did was 4 years ago. Was it 4 or 5 years ago? The first time that Dr. Oliver Winker decided to do this online symposium. And I talked about Chinese medicine, when Chinese medicine crossed over with essential oils. And we talked about the time of the day and how our meridian and our qi actually works according to the time of the day and what essential oils to use for them. And my second online symposium workshop was about meridian and essential oils and how to support different organs and how these different organs interrelate and how we can use by using massage and applying essential oils onto our skin, how we can balance our body and support our different organs so that they can function as their optimal. And last year, my online symposium was on Gary Young, because I wrote a book about him, and it talks mostly about Seed to Seal, about the stories that I've followed Gary around the world. I've been traveling with him for 6 years. I met him back in 2011 when they opened the Singapore office. I am from Hong Kong. Hong Kong is about 4 hours flight from Singapore. And that's when I first met him. And since then, I have traveled with him maybe 4, 5, 6 times a year since until he got sick in 2017 and eventually passed away, unfortunately, May 2018. And I actually wrote a book about all the stories and all the things that I've learned from him. I've been to nearly all of the farms that allow visitors, except the one in Oman. So I'm actually currently now at our Fort Nelson farm up in Canada, up in northern part of Canada. This is our Black Spruce, Northern Lights Black Spruce Farm is in Fort Nelson. Fort Nelson is a little town of 1,000 to 2,000 residents. It used to be a town of gas and oil industry and lumber industry, but a lot of that have moved out of this town. So now there are only about 1,000 people who live here. And back when we ran out of Black Spruce in 2013, I don't know if any of you were with the company back then, and we were out of Black Spruce, so we were out of a lot of the different blends. I think, if I remember correctly, 38 blends, including RC, Motivation, Valor, Peace and Calming. And Valor has a lot of Black Spruce in it. And all of this behind me, you see all of these are Black Spruce. We have enough Black Spruce to use for 3 generations. And for every one Black Spruce tree we harvest, we replant 3 of them. So you don't have to worry about sustainability. Young Living is really adamant about making sure that everything is sustainable in this company. And we were out harvesting yesterday, and we were talking to the local people, the workers who work at our farm. All of these people have lived in Fort Nelson nearly all their lives, and they know this Black Spruce trees really well. And I asked them about harvesting the trees. They say, some of these trees are blocking the sunlight, and if we cut them down, we actually allow sunlight for the younger trees. And so they're totally okay with it because we have mountains of it. And so I'm actually here to talk about Seed to Seal. This is going to be the topic of this lecture. Dr. Oliver Winker has kindly allowed me to choose my own topic. Seed to Seal, the quality of a company, is something that I'm very, very passionate about. I've been honored to be awarded the 5x5 Pledge Development Farm Award. Last year at convention is the first time they've ever had an award like that. They told me that because I am a leader who has brought in many, many of our members who have participated in harvest. And I come here every year. I go to winter harvest every year. I started with Idaho and St. Mary's, and now I'm here in Fort Nelson. The first time I really worked shoulder to shoulder with Gary was 2014. no, it was 2013 actually, 2013 in winter harvest in Idaho, and our St. Marie's farm and our Highland Flat farm. It changed my life. I can talk about that in another time because today I'm going to talk to you about seed to seal and about this farm. So I'm here. It's beautiful. We hand harvest and we machine harvest, and then we distill the oils and we harvest them and then we chip them. So let me show you. I'll bring you to a little bit of distillery tour first before I start with the lecture, so that you all get an idea and get a glimpse of what we actually do here. We are true farmer first company and members first company. We do actually have our own farms, 24 worldwide. I think if I remember the number correctly, I've been to 12 or 14 of them. I lost count already. So I'm here in the distillery. It's now 4 o'clock, and because during the winter festival, I'm here for the winter festival, and the farm only starts operating at night because so that we can coincide with watching the lights on the outside. And somebody's cleaning now. It's nearly 3 o'clock, and they're getting ready for the day. So when we come in here, I'm going to show you. We usually cut the trees down, and then we send them through a chipper. For those of you who lives on a farm and who works with lumber would know how that works. And then we come in here, we unload the chips in a semi through those doors. And actually the semi just fits. Gary measured it so that it actually just fits. The rooftop of this is much higher than the other distillery that you've been. If you've been to Utah at convention, you will see that the distillation farm, the distillery, is actually open door. So over there, all these are exposed. These are the cookers. These are the gigantic monster cookers that Gary designed. Gary designed all of our cookers. And this is half filled with black spruce. They need to be packed properly. I'll talk about it a little bit during the lecture. I just want to show you what everything is. This is actually empty and how deep it is. It's okay. This is 20 feet deep. Yes, and Gary designed it. It's the largest essential oil cooker in North America. He started off with small cookers like this, if you can compare, if you can see, but it's not enough for our demand. So he started planning and thinking of building these. The first gigantic monster cooker was built in Idaho, Highland Flats, because back then we didn't have a distillery up there. Now we do. And so we have one of the small ones, 3 of the big ones, and 1 test cooker. This is a smaller test cooker. Well, we have 2 even smaller cookers down there. I'm going to show you. Maybe I can bring you down and take a look. So after we filled and stomped on the chips, we would have to put the steam through. I will bring you down so that you can take a look. Isn't this the best place to do a seed to seal lecture with Dr. Ollie's online symposium? All right, so now we've walked down. You can see down there, it's actually where the oil come out. It's very quiet now. That's why they let me come in before they actually start distillation so that I can record this. Normally, this stainless steel is glass. When you go to St. Marie's or Idaho, Highland Flats, you will see that this is glass. This is actually the condenser. It's when the steam comes through the cookers, and then the steam will bring through, let's see how I can, okay, here, the steam will go through and work through all of those plant material and bring them through this hose down, and the steam will carry the essential oils from the plant, and it will go through this condenser. And when it goes through the condenser, it comes down. There are cold water tubes, and so when steam it's cold, it reduces temperature, it becomes liquid, right? And this was originally designed as glass because Gary wanted the visitors to see how the oil and the water comes out. You can actually see the oil come out when the oil is separating from the water. It's called, I forgot what it's called, but anyway, pass over. It's called passing over. So when it's pass over, you can actually see oil and water separating. But now, because they've changed this to stainless steel, because the weather is too harsh here, it's too cold outside, and the steam, this is too hot, so it keeps breaking. And they have replaced it several times, but it's still breaking. So now they have to use stainless steel. So we can't see through that, but I can bring you down. It's awfully quiet here, and you can see how clean it is. Gary was very, very strict about how everything needs to be kept spotless, even after every fill. So everybody has to keep cleaning and sweeping the floor. So this was from yesterday, from last night. So the oil would come down through the condenser, along with the floral water, down this pipe, okay, down this pipe, into what this is called a separator. Let me stand farther away, then you can all see. That's a separator. And so the floral water is below, and it's actually called hydrosol. Floral water is diluted hydrosol. So the hydrosol would be below, and it's heavier than oil, than the essential oil, and the essential oil will float on top, just like here. These have already been extracted. These have been taken out, and these are the oil. Usually it goes up to about here. And you will see that the oil actually comes out of the floral water, the hydrosol, in bubbles, and the bubbles would burst. And then when the time, and every batch, every plant requires a different temperature, pressure, and time in order to extract the best quality. We don't extract the most, we extract the best. And after that, they stop it, and then the oil is taken out of from here, go down, and come out of here, okay? And they all go into stainless steel drums like those, okay? Every oil that we distill, everything that we use in all our distilleries and all our farms are all the oil. The only thing that the oil will touch is glass and stainless steel. Gary was very, very adamant and very strict about that. And everything is turned off now, and this is the boiler room. Usually it's restricted because it's really hot, but now I can come in because it's off. Okay. They always have to keep that door open because it's so hot in here. That's a gigantic boiler, and we're just talking to Kevin LaRose here, who's the distillery manager. Oh, here he is, talking about the man himself.
And do you know if there's another boiler like this in the whole of Canada?
I'm sure there's lots, but there's one thing that's completely different about our boiler than any other boiler in Canada, is that ours has no chemicals in it.
Oh, that's the main point.
What do people use for these? What's the purpose of the boiler?
Heating. I know a lot of like textile companies use them. Universities use them to heat their entire facility.
What of chemicals? Why would people put chemicals?
For oxygen scavenging. So the more oxygen you have in your water, the more likely it is to rust and corrode. And that can be damaging to the boiler. Another one is for scale. So what that is it's basically a hard layer that forms on the tubes. And the thicker layer of scale you have, the less heat transfer there is from the fire to the water to create the steam. So the more you build up, the more likely you are to have a failure in your boiler. There's a bunch of other ones. Phosphates, sulfates, flocculants. What those are is basically, even though the water coming in is filtered, there's always going to be a little bit of debris that comes in with it. So the flocculants, what they do is they make them attractive to each other. So they'll bunch together and then fall to the bottom of the boiler. So your boiler's not, doesn't build up with dirty water. So when you steam it, all that debris is going to be left behind, and your steam's going to go clean. So after a while, you can get a dirty layer in your boiler. So we empty it out every couple months and fill it back up. But we have to do a few different things because we're not using chemicals.
What do you do?
So every 6 months we have to shut the boiler down for a week, drain it and open up. Like these are the manholes, or sorry, the handholes, manholes. I gotta take like that plug off that pipe. So basically we gotta inspect the entire internals of the boiler and make sure that scale isn't building up, rust isn't building up in there. Just as a safety precaution, because we don't use those chemicals in there, that can accelerate that process. So we just retubed this, which is basically opening it up, cutting out all the tubes inside there. There's 178 tubes in there, I believe. So we had to cut every single one out, put brand new tubes in there. We did that February of 2017, a week before distributor harvest.
A week before we came.
So it was still going on a little bit when the first group got here, but by the second group we had it all closed up and buttoned up. So it was a stressful couple of weeks because we couldn't make oil during those weeks. But now that those fresh tubes are in there, our boiler's good for minimum 5 years before we even have to start worrying about it again. We do a little bit of water treatment. And the only thing we really do is put it through a water softener, and that'll take out a lot of that scaling. Hard water basically is what causes that. And that's basically what it does is it takes out the calcium and the magnesium out of the water and replaces it with sodium. So sodium is soluble in water, it'll carry through in steam, and it's basically salt. Whereas the calcium and the magnesium produce that hard scale, which can affect the boiler's efficiency, and after a long period of time that can really do some damage to it.
That's an amazing information to have.
But,
because, yes.
I mean, with chemicals, I mean, when we told our regulatory body, so we got the Technical Safety BC, which kind of regulates boilers. So when we told him, our inspector, that we weren't putting chemicals in there, his arms flew up in the air and red flags got up because he never heard of a boiler not being run with chemicals before. And basically we told him if we have to shut the boiler down every year and gut it and rebuild it every year, that's what we'll do, because as soon as we put chemicals in here, we can't use this boiler.
I remember Gary told me that.
Yeah.
When he was setting this up, he could not find an inspector who knows how to inspect a boiler that has no chemicals in it.
Exactly.
He had to teach him. That's why I asked that question just now.
So what we had to do originally is every 3 months open it up. And then we did that for 2 years. And we made reports. So every 3 months I had to write a 30-page report with pictures and send that into him so he can review it and make sure we are still safe with our boiler. And then after 2 years, we got that extended to 6 months. So before, every 3 months, so we'd have to shut it down for about a week. And then if he was on holidays or something when I sent my report in, I'd have to wait for him to get back because I couldn't close it up before he got, gave me his little check mark. So that usually would affect us for 1 week in our season. So our season's only 6 months long. So we would have to shut down for a week in the middle of our season. So we finally got him to agree to 6 months. So now we can run our full season without having to shut down for a week and stop making oil, stop production. And now we can go till the end of our season. Then we can shut it down, inspect it, and then fire it back up after that.
I remember Gary told us that when he was setting up the farm, this was the reason why the distillation had to be deferred, because they wouldn't approve the boiler without chemicals.
There was a lot of red tape we had to cut through, and one of those conditions was the 3 months inspection. Is that the only way they would let us turn it on is, okay, after 3 months, open it up and we'll prove to you that we could run it without chemicals. Because again, they'd never seen a boiler run without chemicals before. Usually, when he first came in, he said, okay, well, where's your chemical injection port? Because usually, there's a pipe on the side that goes right into the boiler, and that just, all day long, that just injects chemicals in there. So when we didn't have one, we had to convince him
Yeah.
that it was, you know, the way we
You
had
know,
to
when
run.
Gary told me, I didn't understand. I only knew the concept, but now that he explained to me, because I remember he said the farm was actually ready to distill at the end of September, but we couldn't because of the boiler issue, and the guy was on holiday, and so he started inspecting in October, but we couldn't fire it up because we had to wait October, November, and December. Eventually, at the end of January, we could run it, right?
We got our permit. Well, we could run it for testing
Yes, not
in
for
January.
use.
So we finally got our permit on March 18th of 2015. That was my first day of work. So that was the when we first got our operating permit. We were allowed to run it.
Yeah, and today is the 16th.
That's right. Yeah. So
Tomorrow.
2 more days will be
Yeah,
5 years
years.
exactly.
Anniversary.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh wow.
Yeah. Well, that was why we had questions for you. Amazing, because this is such important information to send out to the
It
world.
is, yeah.
Because nobody understands this, and people always talk about how do you prove that you don't have chemicals? What's the difference? So we talk about the water, we talk about the gas, we talk about distillation, and every single part of it. I always said that it takes Gary at least 2 hours to explain why our products are better. At least from growing from the seed to the soil to the water that watered the farm and to what we put into the soil and all of that until really the sealing part. It's incredible what we do. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So he was just telling us how this boiler has no chemicals in it. We are not allowed to put chemicals in. However, when we had to register this boiler here in Canada, the person who came to inspect the boiler did not know how to inspect it because they have never heard of anybody who do not use chemicals in their boilers. So what do they use these chemicals for? They use it to make sure that there's descaling, make sure that there's no heavy chemical deposits in the machine, in the boiler, because of how hard the water is, and to prevent it from rusting. And I remember Gary told me that he actually had to teach the examiner how it can be done without rusting and scaling, right? So what we have to do is we have to stop production every 3 months for about a week or two to disassemble the whole thing and take out all the pipes inside and clean it, make sure there's no scaling, there's no rusting, and every 5 years everything inside needs to be changed. And so when Gary was setting this farm up, I remember he told us that he can start distilling in October because he's already set everything, but ended up it was deferred because of this boiler issue, and they needed they needed to make sure that the boiler without any chemicals is actually a feasible idea, and we had to keep the boiler running for 3 months without distillation. And I remember Gary was very, very upset about it. We have to keep it running for 3 months and then show them that it's still working very well and it's very clean, and there's no scaling deposit and there's no rusting. And then before they would need to test our boiler every 3 months, now they allow us to have them come in to test it for every 6 months because we've shown them that it works. This distillery has been in operation since 2015. The first distillation was in March 2015. And then, so after, that was the boiler room. And then after the oil is taken out, it will be, well, we'll take a sample for it to test. And all of our farms have a testing lab with the GCMS in there. And this is the decanting room. There's Frank in there. There's Frank in there. Maybe I can go in. So to show all of you, let me tell them what I'm doing. I'm recording the video for the online symposium. Yes, and I'm just going around showing, this is going to be shown to the world. And so this is the perfect day to be in the decanting room because it's nearly 3:40, the perfect time to see the northern lights inside your eyes through the oil itself. There's something that's very magical that our decanter Frank here has found out, has discovered. And so I'm here with Frank, and these are distributors from the US, right? Alabama. All three of you? Washington. Okay. Well, I'm from Hong Kong. Anyway, I was just interrupting them. They were just chatting in here and looking at how these oils are being filtered. Well, Gary called them filtering. We call them decanting. It's the same thing. It's sort of like decanting a bottle of wine. Gary has found out that he's tried out many different ways to filter them. And I'll explain in a moment why you need to filter them. And we found out that unbleached coffee filters work the best. And you know what? We always ask them to keep these coffee filters for us when we're visiting because they are the best facial mask, because they have absorbed all those amazing essential oils and all the nutrients that are in the floral water and the oil. And can you imagine, Mr. Frank here actually filters every batch of black spruce oil. So if you have a bottle of black spruce oil in your home, it has been filtered through these hands. Isn't that amazing? We love him. Yes, we love Frank. He is like the best, loving, most caring person in the whole entire world. And you have to come here and visit him and give him a hug. Well, I'll leave you guys now and go back out there. Thank you guys. Alrighty. Okay, let's go outside, and I'm gonna bring you out and show you where we dispose of the plant material that has been steamed. And I'll bring you into the lab too, okay? So after these plant materials have been steamed, distilled, they will be unloaded. So after these plant materials have been steamed, distilled, they will be unloaded from one of these using that crane, it will be pulled up. All these chains will be hooked onto all these chains. These ones will be hooked onto that. And these doors here will be open up and it will pull it out and we will dump. I'm gonna go out. It will be dumped right here. And then they will be brought, all these plant material will be brought to the other side of our farm where we have a workshop and a pellet plant. And these chips will be made into little pellets and it will be given to the local people to burn as fuel to warm the houses. And these actually still smell nice. These steamed plant materials still smell good. So Gary has found out the best way to distill it in a certain period of time. So a lot of times these plant materials still smell really nice. Look at that amazing view. You guys all have to come here and take a look at this farm because last night we saw the northern lights. They were out. We actually believe that there are northern lights every night. It's just because we can't see them doesn't mean that they don't exist. And I stayed up until 4 o'clock taking photos of the lights. And then let me see. Oh, let me bring you to the lab too. And this is actually just the first part of this Seek to Seal lecture. I'm going to be talking about my presentation in a moment. But first, I would like to bring you to the lab and meet our lab tech, Wes, who has worked with Gary since Gary started building this distillery. All right, let's see. Mr. Wes is cleaning the floor. I'm doing a recording for the online symposium. This recording is going to go to the world, and this is Wes here. He is our lab tech. He helps test every batch of black spruce oil that is distilled in this farm, in this lab. And we have a GC. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what you talk about when people come through this in the tour.
Down inside of a glass user. And inside there's a little space. It's very hot. So once that sample goes down in there, the heat breaks that oil apart into all its separate components. From there it goes down into called a capillary column. Can't open it right now because it's too hot. I have two of these hanging in there. So what this is, it just looks like a wire, but it's hollow inside. And it's about as a quarter of a micron, so it's actually about the size of a human hair inside. And your sample vapor starts to run through it. As it runs through, it reacts with the coating inside. And what happens is all your separate compounds start to gather together and then start to move apart. So as it's going through, all your different chemicals in there start to get further and further apart. And that's the whole basis behind chromatography, is separation. You take a whole part, separate it into all its simplest parts, study it in its entirety. Now this is, what's the limitation of this machine as compared to an MS, is that this can count the charges of the atoms, whereas an MS will actually measure out each part of that atom and weigh it subatomically. So it's very much more precise than this one. After it's finished traveling through the column, it'll come up through this last part here. Now that's called a detector. Inside there is a oxygen and hydrogen flame, burns very, very hot. And as soon as the carbon atoms pass through it, carbon atoms gain a charge. And it ionizes. And then the detector picks up the charge of those ions and quantifies it. So it counts it. In that way, we know how much of that sample is in there. And the computer, it computes how long it took for it to travel through the column. So what you get is called a chromatogram. Along the bottom is your time scale, and on the left side is your intensity. So it'll tell us when the first compound came out and then how much of it there was. So the way these are geared is when you're completing your chemical table, you take a known chemical, you study it, you mark down its retention time, and then every time that chemical comes through again, we can identify that as one certain compound. One of the tricky parts is some of these really like to stick together because chemically they're very similar. So it's really hard to separate them. And they can get confused on the computer and they can actually misidentify certain chemicals. So I had to study black spruce for a long time to know that if that little peak there doesn't show up, then it's obviously become part of a bigger peak and the percentage is going to be incorrect. So it's my job still, I have to go back through and make sure the mistakes are corrected. But this does save me a lot of time. At the very beginning when I was doing the testing, I had to go back through each time, re-identify. It took me about an hour and a half to do each test. Cut it down to 15 minutes, so it saved me a lot of time. So, pretty useful. Once I have a library of certain compounds that I've been able to verify what they are, I can use different oils, say nutmeg. I can put a sample of nutmeg in there, and it'll identify those compounds in there as well, because I already have that in my library. So as the years go on, my library is going to get bigger and bigger, and the more flexible my testing can be. This is actually a system that gets better with age. The longer that you work it, the more chemicals you have, the wider range of testing you can do. That becomes just more accurate over time as you use it.
And our company has 30 years of experience and 30 years worth of lab records, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So that's actually represented. This is Young Living's retention index. This is a library of the chemicals that they've produced, and then their scientists. We can't actually record the results. So what this does, it gives me a wealth of information, library that I can use for reference. So if I have a question about something that's unknown, I can come back and go through it, and at least it'll point me in the right direction. But it's taken many, many years to be able to create this own index, and Yeah, it's been very helpful.
Yeah, we have the largest index in the world for essential oils.
This is only just part of it.
Yes, I know that we have 3 million entries.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I probably only have maybe 4,000 in here.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, oh, look, we've got hand labeled oils. Testing right here. There's so much secret in this place. All right, thank you, Wes. Thank you. So that's sort of like the end of a tour. I'm gonna be talking about my presentation properly in a moment. And I hope you all enjoy a tour of this amazing distillery that Gary built. And you all need to come here and experience it, because just looking through and meeting people online isn't the same as meeting them in person, right? And you know what? Let me bring you down to the back and look at that. Let me see. And I'm going to be talking a little bit more about testing, because our testing, the way that we test our oils in this company is different than the other companies. Let me walk through to the back. It's quite amazing there too. This view is amazing. It's really quiet. Nobody's here. I want to show you something. We were hand harvesting yesterday. So we're on our way to hand harvesting the trees. And we're on skidoos, sort of like a snowmobile, what people would call. The local people call it a skidoo. And that's our farm. We're heading towards a part of the farm to harvest the black spruce trees by hand. The small ones we harvest by hand. The large ones we do have machines, but we can't go into the larger machines now because the ground is very muggy and muddy, because it's not as cold as it normally is. So they can only go in at 5 o'clock in the morning when the ground is still frozen, and they will harvest then.
So the reason why we come out in the winter times, it's nice and hard, it's frozen. We can bring the machines, we can bring the heavy equipment onto it, and it's basically just like a big road.
And then in the summer, you cannot bring anything heavy in, right?
No, so that water underneath, it could be 2 inches deep, it could be 20 feet deep. You never know.
No, it's just a root system. I got zero on the fuel bike right now.
Right? But then if you just take and squeeze that, just so you can...
wow, hey.
So like, I mean, that's why when you expose any part of it, it's just water. It's literally just water and roots. Like there's no...
So you run the risk of sinking pretty deep if you're not in the right spot.
But you can walk and animals can come in.
Oh, yes.
So that's how nature has made it. So that light animals and humans can walk through, but not machines.
Yes.
Hello. So I'm now at the Blacksburg Farm. We are doing hand harvest. We just have 2 people today, and they still brought us out here. And I'm going to record a video of how it is being cut down by hand. We've got Kevin and Seth here helping us out.
Hello.
And we came out in skidoos.
You want to cut down a tree like this. So when we're doing our black spruce, we want to cut trees down that are in this general height because they're the best for the oil.
Ah, okay. And how old would that tree be?
That tree is about 15 years old. 15 to 20 to 30.
Ah, okay. All right.
Just clear some of the snow so we can get the majority. Get your saw in there. Then you'll hold your tree and take your saw and just go back and forth. And you do that.
Slanted or sideways?
Flat's better because if someone else is working with you and it's on an angle like this and they trip and fall, it can cut them. So I always cut trees flat straight across the bottom.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then it doesn't hurt if someone falls or trips over it. And
Okay, that makes sense.
Safety first.
Okay.
So would you like to come and
Give it a go.
give your tree cutting a go?
Oh, And we noticed that if we thank the tree before we cut it down, they actually cut easier. So maybe we'd have to thank this tree for giving us oils that we'll bring to the rest of the world and help them. So Kevin, how do we know how old a tree is?
So after you cut your tree down, you wipe off all the sawdust and wood shavings, and you start at the center and you count the rings. So you start with the center. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. Right here, right? 27, right at the tip of my finger. Oh, this one? Yeah. 27. So this one? Right there. Oh, okay. 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38. 39, and then 40 is this outer ring right here. So that tree is 40 years old.
Wow. So some people would say that it's not nice to be cutting trees that's 40 years old, but I think some people look at it differently. How do we think about it? But because do we replant trees? Do you know?
We reforest, yes. The reason we get rid of the trees that are getting to 40 years old and a little older is so we let in more sunlight to get into the younger trees and allow the younger trees to get more sun and allow them to grow and be healthier and better.
I see. Okay, let's keep going. Thank you.
I hope that I'll be able to put the hand harvesting video in here so that you can see. And these are the trees that we hand harvested yesterday. We actually went out to the farm, to the forest, and hand harvested these trees. This one, I had a tree that was so big that had to be cut in two. And so this is actually the testing chipper.
And here we are hand chipping the trees that we have harvested during that day. Normally they won't allow children on the field like this, but because Audrey, she goes to the farm all the time, and she's really eager to help, and we can't really say no to a little girl. So, and here's the Jessie distiller. It's usually for testing small batches, especially when we're testing new plants. And we will fill it up like how we would do a normal distillery. And then we will put water in and we will wait for the steam to come out. And now this is the hydrosol that is coming out. And you can slowly see that the water comes out first, just like how we would normally do the distillation. And you will also see the oil coming out during Passover in a moment. And later on, you'll see that when that hydrosol fill up, you will see that it will come out into the measuring jar and the oil is floating on the top. And later on, you'll see that Wes, our lab tech, whom you have met previously in the video, he will be taking some oils out and test them first. So that's how we test every single batch of our oils and make sure that they are of the highest and purest quality.